Final Fantasy XIV. The MMO is coming to the Xbox. Phil Spencer and the gang have talked to Square Enix, and Square Enix has said that Final Fantasy XIV, after 10 years being on the market, is finally coming to the Xbox. Now, it makes sense for an MMO to be everywhere, and I don't think that this means that every single thing Square Enix does in the future will be day and date on Xbox. I'm going to tell you why I don't think that, even though many people seem to be reading that into this announcement. Now, since 2017, Microsoft has been trying and talking to Square to get Final Fantasy XIV to the Xbox, and here we are in 2023 with the announcement that the game is coming, but it's going to take at least 6 more months for it to get to the Xbox, which is kind of strange. I know some people are talking about the DLC, and maybe that's why they're taking their time. They want the complete experience to come, but we're talking 10 years already this game hasn't been on Xbox, so 6 more months, okay, we can wait. But again, it makes sense for an MMO to want to seek the largest audience possible. So I don't think this means necessarily that Square Enix wants every single piece of Final Fantasy to come to Xbox day and date. I'm going to tell you again why that is, because in the press release, they say specifically, and the devil is in the details here, whenever possible, we are looking to bring more Final Fantasy to Xbox whenever possible. Those two words together give you a lot of wiggle room to keep Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation, to keep Final Fantasy XVI more recently on the PlayStation for a much longer period in time. Think about this. The one-off Final Fantasy games, the single-player, narrative-driven Final Fantasy games, do they need a MMO audience? Do they need the largest pool of players to be successful, or do they need one-off sales of individual titles to be successful? So with an MMO, you really don't necessarily need $70 singular purchases added up to like 3, 4, 10, 20 million copies sold. You need 3, 4, 10, 20 million players with an MMO. So it's much easier, I think, for Square to let these MMOs go everywhere, including Xbox now, than it is the standalone Final Fantasy titles that depend on individual supported sales. And I know a lot of people don't like to reference this or talk about this or even approach this topic, but Final Fantasy JRPGs in general traditionally have not sold one-off copies well enough to really make a dent on Xbox. Now you could say, well, that's because they never put them there to begin with. I don't have access to this information. I don't know the metric that Square Enix is looking to me, but I do know that they recently announced that they're very, very, very happy with the sales of Final Fantasy XVI on the PlayStation, and they've been very, very, very happy in the past with Final Fantasy single-player games and the support and the sales that they get and continue to get on the PlayStation. So, does this mean that Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming to Xbox sooner rather than later, or that Final Fantasy XVI is coming to Xbox sooner rather than later because Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, is coming to Xbox finally? I don't know, and I think those two words, whenever possible, they're really telling. Because, again, I want to reiterate that an MMO coming to the Xbox called Final Fantasy is not the same as Final Fantasy XVI or Final Fantasy VII Remake coming to the Xbox. There's a specific reason, I think, beyond money, going from Sony to Square, that those games traditionally skew very well on a PlayStation and get the support that Square is looking for, which is individual sales of a title versus an MMO, which just wants a larger pool of people. Now, there's another way to look at this. Obviously, it's a positive. I mean, anything from Square Enix going to Xbox is always going to be big news, and Microsoft finally getting something that they've been working to get since 2017 is actually a good thing, and it could mean that Square Enix is more in tune with the idea of getting more players to try not only MMOs, which rely on large pools of players, but maybe getting more people to try again and see if they can become successful their traditional Final Fantasy single-player games. All in all, it's a good thing that this is happening. Hopefully, it translates into the idea behind what I think many people want this to be, and that's Final Fantasy everything day and date on the Xbox. I think we're a long way away from seeing that, and I want to stress this. You can't just wish for content just because you can say it's there. You actually have to play this content. You actually have to show an interest in the content being created from different developers in order for them to see that there is an audience worth giving these titles to. There's an audience receptive to purchasing these games beyond just saying, here they are in a list. Let me move on now to the next thing that I could add to this list so that I can win on social media. Buy these games, play these games, show interest in these games, create communities around these games, and these games will come to the Xbox. So what do you think? Whenever possible, what does that mean? Do you think now the floodgates are open and everything and anything Final Fantasy is coming to the Xbox day and date, or do you think this is going to continue when it comes to the mainline single-player Final Fantasy games, where they come out on the PlayStation first, and then hopefully at some distant point in the future, maybe the Xbox gets those single-player Final Fantasy games? I'm not sure why I decided to stop and pause like that. Again, I'm channeling William Shatner in these videos. I don't know why I do that, but think about liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video, Mr.